This is OpenSaaS, a React repo with everything that you need in order to launch a SaaS app. But ask an AI agent like OpenCode a question about it, and you'll watch it burn through tokens and time, rebuilding this mental map of how the code fits together every session. Graphify claims to fix this, and today we'll find out the real difference that it makes. Here I have two instances of OpenCode. The left one has Graphify, and I asked the same question to each. The one on the left with Graphify took 1 minute and 9 seconds. The one on the right without Graphify took 1 minute and 39 seconds. 36.7 thousand tokens. The one on the right, 50,000 tokens. First, let's talk about what Graphify is and why it exists. It all stems from this tweet by Andrej Karpathy. He's really big in the AI space. He talked about how he's been using LLMs to create what he calls LLM knowledge bases, creating this kind of wiki for your project, which helps the LLM to navigate your project, your repo better. And this can be for personal projects or it can be from code. In this video, I'm gonna show you how you can use it with your code base. He ends it by saying, I think there is room here for an incredible new product instead of a hacky collection of scripts. That same week on Reddit, the creator of Graphify shared his project. He specifically gave credit to Karpathy for the idea. On April 5th, it only had 1 star. By May 23rd, it has 52,341 stars. So that's enough talk. Let me show you how to set this up. First, starting with the prerequisites, you just have to have Python and UV installed. And it even gives you the exact lines here that you can copy and paste in your terminal. And then after that, you can just copy this right here, and we're going to bring that over into our cursor, and then we're just going to paste that here in our terminal. UV tool install Graphify. Now that it's installed, we need to register it with our AI agent. In this case, we're going to do Graphify install -platform OpenCode, and you can see here in the documentation all the different platforms that they currently support, along with some extra extensions that you can add to it as well. We'll run that. Now it tells us we need to open up our AI coding assistant and type /Graphify. I'm going to open up an OpenCode server by running OpenCode serve. And the repo that I'm going to be running Graphify on is called OpenSaaS. It's got 14,000 stars on GitHub. I'm going to have it start creating the graph, but I added this one note here that's really important if you're using OpenCode. I said, when making the semantic relationships, instead of Claude, use the current OpenCode session and use subagents. We're going to run that. And the reason why I added this is because Graphify is going to process your files in 3 passes. The first time it's going to go, it's going to look at the code structure, and it's going to use tree sitter to parse your code files and extract classes and functions and imports. The second one, it's going to look for videos and audio. The third one, it's going to look for documents, papers, and images. And it's going to be looking for these different relationships. And there's going to be some semantic relationships. This is where it's using the Claude subagent, and that's where it's going to cost tokens. Because this is relatively new, the support for OpenCode isn't quite there. And if you run it without this note, what's going to happen is that it's going to start trying to look for Claude, and it's going to get confused and it might not work properly. So that's why it's really good that you have a note on there if you're using OpenCode or some other IDE to say, instead of Claude, use the current session. That way it routes everything through your current LLM. While that's running, generating our graph, I'm going to go over some things about Graphify that show why it's a very important skill. So typically, whenever you work with an LLM, when you're coding or maybe you have your little work project, this is the flow that typically happens. You ask a question, and then it's going to start grepping for files. It's going to read the raw text, and then it's going to, in some cases, kind of guess the relationship. It's trying to navigate the entire code base without a map. And that's what this skill is trying to do. It's trying to give a map for your code base to the agent. That way they can understand how it works better. You think about in real life, if you go to one of your friend's house, you don't need a map for their house because it's relatively small. But then you go to a city that you've never been before, you're gonna need a map because it's very vast. And the bigger your code base is, the more valuable that this is gonna be for you. Now, while it's true that this helps your LLM find files better and find information better, it's important not to get it confused with RAG. It extracts a deterministic map. It's not this fuzzy text searching. If we were to use RAG in this case, what we would be doing is dumping code into a vector database, and it's going to be searching for similar words that kind of have a similar meaning, but it's still going to actually skip and miss the actual structural connections. What Graphify does is it's deterministic. It uses treesitter to extract exact imports and function calls, and then it builds this queryable graph that we're going to see very soon. It's not guessing dependencies, it's mapping them exactly. Now, if you're concerned about privacy and security, there's no telemetry, there's no code that's being sent to random APIs, it's 100% local. It processes your code files locally, videos and audio, those are going to be transcribed locally as well with faster whisper. Nothing's going to leave your machine. If you have docs and images, that's going to be sent to your IDE's existing LLM API, or we could say a agentic harness. Now it's finished, and it's told us where the output of the run is, and it's told us that the Graph.html is there, which is the interactive graph. We can open that up in the browser. We get a graph report, which is the audit report, and we get the graph.json, which is the raw graph data. This is what the graph.html looks like. You can see it's made relationships between all the different files and all the different lines of code and functions, and it split them up even into these different communities here on the right, where we can look at how does the billing and the webhooks flow together, how does task and admin operations work. We can see there's this operations.ts, and from there we get all these sorts of different functions. And if we really zoom in, you can see how all these different things relate to one another. This is what OpenCode is going to be using whenever you ask it questions about your code base, or even when you ask it to code something up. It's going to first look at the relationship of your existing code base before it does anything. And inside of this how it works .md, inside of the docs, it goes into how these different communities are detected and how they're linked together. It says that they use the Leiden algorithm, which is a graph clustering method that groups nodes by edge density. Nodes with many connections between them end up in the same community. If there's a lot of these nodes that have relationships, then they're just going to be formed into a certain community. With that, there's no embeddings needed, so the semantic similarity edges that Claude extracts are already in the graph. They influence community shape directly. The graph structure is the similarity signal. There's no separate embedding step or vector database. And every relationship is going to be tagged with one of these three labels. Extracted, it's found directly in the source like a function call or an import. There's inferred, there's a reasonable inference that the AI model made with a confidence score, or there's ambiguous, so that's uncertain, and that's flagged in the report for manual review. Now that we have this system set up with this very dense amount of information, it would be a shame if our AI model didn't actually use it, right? If we want to fix that, if we want to make sure that OpenCode always uses Graphify, then we're going to run this command, Graphify OpenCode install. And what that does is it makes an agents.md file, and it specifies some rules that make sure that OpenCode is going to use Graphify properly and every time, instead of resorting back to old trained behavior. But first, let's go ahead and test it. If we look in our graph report.md, it gives us some suggested questions that this graph is uniquely positioned to answer. Let's try this one. Why does CN connect demo dashboard widgets to front-end dependencies and to all these other places? And now typically, I know I don't have to show you guys because you use this all the time, but typically it would start using grep and it would start using glob and it would start like kind of bouncing all over. But it may still use a little bit of grep, but primarily it should first start querying Graphify to look for these relationships instead in order to answer this question. And you can see here how it does so, and here as well. And this brings us to another important concept, and it's that you can use Graphify directly just by running it in the command line. You can type in, for instance, Graphify query show the auth flow, and we'll go ahead and try that one. It shows us the 43 nodes found that are related to the auth flow, which is kind of hard for a human to read, but the idea is there. Now we come back to here and it's answered our question, and it's right around the 34,000. This was the same prompt that I used in the beginning to show you the difference between using Graphify and not using Graphify. So you can see again on the second run, it was just as lean, and it took about the same time, 1 minute and 7 seconds. It's given us the short answer to that question. It says it's the project's common class name composition helper, and the graph correctly treats it as a cross-community bridge for many UI components. So probably the next question that you're having is, am I going to have to rerun this all the time? What if I forget? It's going to be giving me stale data. I'm going to be changing my code up. Maybe this isn't going to work for me. Check this out. If you run this command right here, Graphify hook install, it's going to install some post commit and post checkout hooks. It's automatically going to update your graph as you commit it. Another thing that you can do is you can run Graphify PRS, and that's going to give you a PR dashboard that's going to show you the CI state, the review status, and the work tree mapping. And if you run it with a number, then that lets you do a deep dive on that specific pull request with a graph impact. You can even have AI rank your review queue, and you can even have Graphify check for any sort of conflicts and the merge order risk. The reason that I've been covering a lot of these agent skills is really because of the industry shift that's happening right now. There's a lot more focus put on systems rather than models, and agent skills are surging because of that, because the model is only half of the equation. You think about where we were, like a lot of people were obsessing over model parameters and context windows, but now we're getting to this phase where people are really wanting to see how they can augment the agent, how they can augment the LLM by adding these different agent skills, by giving them different ways to have this persistent memory. And it's getting to more of a balanced view of the model, in that people are starting to view it more as just the engine, and skills are like the transmission. That's really changing how it works, right? If you want to continue to learn about these different sorts of AI topics coming out, these different agent skills, then please subscribe to this channel. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it as well. And if you're really trying to grow your AI skills or build something serious, then consider joining our school community, link in the description. Over there, it's completely free to join. Another way that you can start building a better system around the LLM is by adjusting the agent, making sub-agents and specialized agents. If you'd like to learn how to do that, you can check out my video on that right over here.